All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin. We'll begin by starting to thank our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, Yona and Shushie Ehrenfeld, for dedicating all of the shiurim and drashos this month of Chodesh Iyar in loving memory and l'zeich nishmas Yona's grandfather, Yosef ben Shmuel Aron. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. We thank our Week of Learning sponsor, Jack Bennett, in memory of Sergeant Nikolai Rappaport of the Givati Brigade, who was killed in Lebanon in a Hezbollah ambush on February 7th, 1998. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshama will have an aliyah and the family in a chama. And with that, let us begin. So, Shachianu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. That's v'yazoch eretz Hashem. To begin, Maseches Yoma, an incredible, overwhelming, and beautiful Masechta. And we're supposed to say, well, let's jump right in. So, just you'll notice, I think, did I send that on the WhatsApp yesterday? The picture of the Beis HaMikdash? Did I say? I did? Okay, good. So I'll say, so you'll refer to that. That picture will be helpful to you. You don't need it as much for today, although we will make a quick reference to it as well this morning. But ultimately, Yuma is going to be very much focused on a lot of the avod in the Beis HaMikdash, as well as with incredible agarta and halacha and many, many, many other things as part of. Did I forget something? No, I fixed it. The Zoom, yeah. So as many other things that in Eretz Hashem we will go through over the course of this Masechta. So also, you'll see, we'll make reference to that picture today just a little bit. With that, let's begin. I will say, as I mentioned the other day, we're speaking about Karbanos, Unashama Parim Sfasenu. So the amazing part is, Yom Kippur is one day out of the year. And on one hand, we say to ourselves, it's only one day. And not else the fasting. The fasting is fine that it's one day. But else the experience and just else the hisorus of this incredibly special day. The beautiful part is that for the next 80 plus days, every day is Yom Kippur. Every day is Yom Kippur. Every single day, we will get to tap into the holiness, to the kedusha, to the sanctity of this incredible day. So an incredible schos. With that, let's begin. Shivas Yomim Kol Yom Kippurim. By the way, you're going to see also, it's so nice to be back in Bavli. It's like seeing an old friend who you haven't seen for 22 days. Aruch Hashem Yerushalmi, as we've seen, is a little bit different, just a little bit different than the rest of our limos. So you'll see back to the regular lashon, back to the regular shakla v'tarya. And with that, let us begin. Shivas Yamim Kol Yom Kippurim, Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mibesu Lishkas Parhedron. 7 days before Yom Kippur, we separate out the Kohen Gadol from his home and we take him to the Lishkas Parhedron. So Shabbos says we're going to discuss. Well, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Once again, also we're back to Rashi and Tosas, which is nice. So Rashi on the right-hand side of the page, in case you've forgotten over the last 22 days, Rashi says, Shivas Yom Kol Yom Kippurim Mafrishin Kohen Gadol, Shekol Avodas Yom Kippurim Eina Kshera Elabo. The avodah of Yom Kippur can only be performed by the Kohen Gadol. Ked Yolef Baharius, Perek Basra, Dichsiv Gab Yom Kippurim, V'chipar HaKohen Asher Yimshach Oso, so again, it's because the avodah of Yom Kippur is only kosher through the Kohen Gadol. We'll see exactly why we're sequestering him, but we go ahead and essentially take the Kohen Gadol out of his home right after Rosh Hashanah. Because remember again, even in Eretz Yisrael, Rosh Hashanah is 2 days. So right after Rosh Hashanah, we go ahead and we take the Kohen Gadol out of his home and we take him to the Lishkas Parhedron, which, as we're going to see, was a chamber inside of the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi say, just if you look at the image I sent you yesterday on the chat, so you'll see again, you can see the Lishkas Parhedron it's chamber chaf. So you can notice it's situated kind of right in the middle of the Beis HaMikdash compound, pretty right between like the Azara and the Kodesh. It's a box chaf. It's chamber chaf. And again, as we're going to see, the interesting part about the Lishkas Parhedron is that it can be accessed from the outside of the Beis HaMikdash as well. In other words, I don't know that you could see it as much on this particular picture, but you'll see again behind Lishka Chaf, you'll see there are stairs on the outside, so you don't have to walk through the Azara in order to access Lishkas Parhedron, but you can even access it from the outside as well. So 7 days before Yom Kippur, we go ahead and we sequester the Kohen Gadol in the Lishkas Parhedron. Umaskinen lo Kohen Acher Tachtov. What else do we do? We go ahead and we go ahead and we appoint a replacement Kohen Gadol. Right, a backup Kohen Gadol in the event Shema Yarabo Psul, lest something happen to the regular Kohen Gadol, we need a replacement. Because this goes back to what we just said before. Since the avodah of Yom Kippur can only be performed through the Kohen Gadol, therefore it is of vital importance that we have a Kohen Gadol. So not only do we sequester him from his home 7 days before Yom Kippur in order to prepare for the avodah, but we also prepare a backup. Now, we're going to discuss this. It's not such a chiddush because in general there is the position of the Sgan Kohen Gadol. And the avodah, the job of the Sgan ultimately was to go ahead and be prepared to stand in should something happen to the Kohen Gadol. Shemi Arba Psul. Rabbi Yehuda says, this is incredible, Av Isha Acheres Maskinen Lo Shema Tamos Ishto. Not only do we appoint a replacement Kohen Gadol, but we also appoint a backup wife. A backup wife. Why? For what purpose? Lest the Kohen Gadol's wife die. And the halacha is shene'emar v'chiper ba'ado u'ba'ad beiso zu ishto. I will say the pasuk says that the Kohen Gadol will atone for himself and on behalf of his household. The household that they are referencing over here is his wife. So not only do we appoint a backup Kohen Gadol, but we also appoint a backup wife for the Kohen Gadol. Chas v'shalom, in the event that his wife should pass away, we have the ability to have him married before Yom Kippur. This way he's suitable to do the avodah. Be interesting to see exactly how that played out in one Shalom Bayis, right? Again, I don't know if you introduce your current wife to your backup wife, however it works, but Lamaisa, I don't know. The Gemara says, however, interesting enough, Amrulo. So they said, Rabbi Yehuda, no. We'll appoint a backup Kohen Gadol, but we are not going to appoint a backup wife for one simple reason. Im kain ein ledavar sof. Because we will say, if you do this, there's no, once you're going to start being, I understand, you want to be choshish and maybe something's going to happen to the Kohen Gadol, because also remember again, the fact that a Kohen Gadol could become disqualified for avodah of Yom Kippur, that's not so far-fetched. Remember again, that could happen in a variety of ways. Tumas mace, quite corpse exposure. Tumas sheretz, he comes in contact with a dead rodent. Tumas keri, he has a seminal emission. There's so many different things that could occur over the course of these 7 days, and even night before Yom Kippur, it makes sense. It's good protocol to have a backup Kohen Gadol. But beyond that, so they say to Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to start appointing a backup wife, well, then we're going to see in the Gemara, well, then maybe you should appoint a backup to the backup, right? Because again, if the wife could die, the backup could die, the backup to the backup could die, ein ledavar sov, which Rabbi says is an incredible statement, both al halacha and hashkafa, which is in life, also an incredible yesod. In life, you have to put in hishtadlus. Right? In life, you must go ahead and put in proper effort. But a person also has to realize that too much hishtadlus could backfire in a number of different ways. First of all, too much hishtadlus could undermine a person's emunah. Right? A recognition, I have to put in my effort, but the Ribono Shalom runs the show and choreographs the circumstances and situations. And also what it could do is, a person will say there's a term of analysis paralysis. If a person analyzes every single thing that can go wrong in any given situation, the only logical thing to do is absolutely nothing. Because when you contemplate, right, you're about to cross the street, and you go and you contemplate all the things that could go wrong with crossing the street, or all the things that could go wrong if you go ahead and you get into your car, you begin to analyze all of these things, then by definition, simply you won't act, because the potential risks are so high. So obviously life is this incredibly delicate balance between, of course, analysis, between forethought, between contemplation regarding, again, proper risks, but then also realizing that sometimes you just have to do, you just have to go, you just have to move. So the Gemara says, Im kain, if you're going to contemplate every potential risk and every potential thing that can go wrong, ein ledavar sof. So the Gemara goes right. I'll tell you an interesting sas emes on the Gemara, but first maybe we'll go a little bit weiter in the Gemara. So Tanan Hasam, so we learned over there. So we learned there. Shivas Yam Kol Nusiyafas Hapara. So the Gemara is quoting now another Mishnah. a Mishnah from Meseches Para, where the Mishnah discusses the idea that 7 days before the offering of the Para Aduma, Hayu Mafrishin Kohen Hasarif Esapara Mibeso, Lilishka Shal Panei Habira Safona Mizracha. So we'll say 7 days before the Para Aduma was offered, they would also go ahead and sequester the Kohen who was going to do the Avoda for 7 days. And they would go in and sequester him to a chamber, literally, Lilishka Shal Panei Habira, to a chamber that is facing the bira. Now we'll discuss exactly what that word means, bira. We'll see just in a few lines. Safona Mizracha, on the northeast corner of the, presumably of Beis HaMikdash, Velishkas Beis HaEven Haisa Nikres. And ultimately, again, it was called, the name of this chamber was the Lishkas Beis HaEven. That was the name. Literally, again, Lishka of the stone Lishka, or the Lishka of stone. Velama Nikres. So why was the chamber called the Lishkas Beis HaEven? This is fascinating. Shekol ma'aseh b'klei gololim, b'klei avonim, or b'klei adama. Because I will say the entire service of the Para Aduma was performed with utensils made of, gololim is animal dung. So utensils made of dung, utensils made of stone, and utensils made of adama. I will say now what I want to point out is as follows. Adama, you'll say to yourself, that sounds like the same thing as what? As cheres, as earthenware. But earthenware is mekabel tumah. So what's happening over here? Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Shekol ma'aseh shal para klei gilalim tzefi'ei bakar b'far shalav menachos. So again, literally, is cow dung, dried cow dung, fashioned into a utensil. Klei adama, Rashi says, she'in asuyin ke kli chares. So klei adama is different than kli chares. How so? Because again, she'in asuyin kli chares b'kivshan. Elamin ha'adama he shu ke'evin raka v'chokikim mimena kelim. So we'll say this is actually interesting. Klei adama, what they're calling earthenware or earthen vessels, are made in one of two ways. Either you would take softer rock and hollow it out, or the second possibility was they would fashion something out of dirt, but as opposed to an earthenware vessel, kli cheres, which is hardened in a kiln. Right, it's put in an oven. And the heat hardens it. Klei adama often is left to dry in the sun. So we'll say, what's the common denominator between klei gilalim, klei adama, and klei avanim? Right, utensils made of dung, stone, and dirt. They're not makabel tumah. So it's very interesting. So therefore, again, all of the utensils used with para aduma were not mekabel tumah. So just to kind of, so just to understand what the information you're being given. The Kohen who was going to do the avodah for the Para Aduma was sequestered from his home in a chamber called the Lishkas Beis HaEven. Why was it called the Lishkas Beis HaEven? Because inside of that chamber they would also keep the utensils for the Para Aduma. What type of utensils would they use for Para Aduma? Well, stone utensils was one of them, in addition to dung utensils and earthen utensils. They would sequester the Kohen for the Para Aduma for what purpose? Again, bepashtos, to teach him the avoda. Because the avoda of the Para Aduma was complicated, much like the avoda of Yom Kippur. So they sequestered him in order to teach him. Shabbos said, listen to this. Why do they have to use these type of utensils by Para Aduma? Right? I don't say what Shabbos said. Remember again, we use metal utensils in the Beis HaMikdash all the time, right? So we use gold, we use silver, we use copper. It's not like in the Beis HaMikdash we're makbid to use utensils or art in mekabel tumah. So why by Para Aduma? And I will say, by the way, it's even a stronger question. Because remember, is the avodah of the Para Aduma inside of the Beis HaMikdash? No, not really. The avodah. Remember, we spoke about this before. We saw this in Shkalim, I will say, right? By the bridges that were built by the Kohanim Gedolim for Paradum. Paradum was done on Har HaZeisim. It was done across the valley. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa. Why do you have to go ahead and use kelim that are not mekabel tumah for Paraduma? So we'll say this is incredible. My taima. What's the reason? Kevan titvul yom kasher bepara. Because we'll say, listen to this. Tvul Yom is permitted to go ahead and do the service of Para Aduma. Now I will say, remember again, what's a Tvul Yom? Remember, halacha l'maisa, if someone becomes tamei, and then they immerse in a mikvah, so for many types of tumah, immersion in a mikvah is a step, but you need what's called herav shemesh. You need the sun to set, right? And then ultimately, again, you could go ahead and become tahar. So interestingly enough, the Gemara says, this is fascinating, Para Aduma was dafka done by a Kohen who was a Tavul Yom. Now, I will say, this is mind-blowing. This is absolutely, if it wasn't 6 o'clock in the morning, you'd be falling off your chair from shock from this. I will say, this is absolutely mind-blowing. Are you kidding me? Para Aduma is the service that is most closely related to Tara, to purity. And you're telling me now that the Para Aduma was dafka done by a kohen that's a Tvul Yom. I will say, if you think you can't get crazier, watch this. Disnan, get ready. What type of Tvul Yom? Mitamin hayu hakoin asarif hasapara. I will say, listen to this. We would purposely be mitame the kohen who was going to do the avodah of the Para Aduma. Do you hear this? Do you hear this? We would purposely be, it's shocking, we would purposely be mitame him. So I will say he's training for 7 days to do the Para Aduma, and right before he does the Para Aduma, we say to him, here, hold this. And what is it? It's a dead sheretz, for illustration purposes, right? It's a dead sheretz. Here, hold this. And suddenly what he's tamei, then we tell him, okay, go to the mikvah, and now he's a Tvul Yom. And I tell, now you're ready. Now you're ready to do the Para Aduma. What? Why would you do this? Listen to this. Lahotzi mi liban shel tzdukim. Both say this was in order to go ahead and disprove the false ideology of the tzdukim. Remember again, the tzdukim were a sect who only believed in Torah Sheba'al Peh, Torah Shebechsav, and not Torah Sheba'al Peh, only in the written law and not the verbal law, because the Tzdukim says Omrim b'ma'orave hashemesh haisen nasa. Nasis. The Tzdukim held that only a Kohen who was fully pure, who was fully tar, both mikvah as well as harav shemesh, could go ahead and do the avodah of the Para Aduma. Therefore, so therefore, we're going to both say, in order to show the tzdukim that ultimately, again, they were wrong, that even a kohen who's a tvul yom has the ability to do the avodah, they would purposely be mitame the kohen in order to go ahead and show that even a tvul yom could go ahead and do the avodah of Para Aduma. So I will say, but as a countermeasure to that, takinu le rabbanan klei gilalim klei avanim klei adama dilo lekablu tuma ki hechi dilo zalzlu ba. So I will say, but there's a concern. The concern, of course, is that Allah Chalamayis, if you're going to allow a Kohen who is a Tvul Yom to do the avodah, what could happen? What could have to do Para Aduma? People could end up treating Para Aduma lightly, right? They could end up taking certain liberties with this. So kind of in order to offset the kula of Tvul Yom, they legislated a chumrah. What's the chumrah? You could only use utensils that are not mekabel tumah for Para Aduma. So I'll say that was the countermeasure. So on one hand, we're going to be metame the kohen, allow a Tvul Yom to do Para Aduma. Why? Lahotzi miliban shel tzedukim. To show the tzedukim that they were wrong. But lest people therefore come to take liberties with the sanctity of Para Aduma, will legislate a chumrah, counterbalancing chumrah, which is you could only use utensils that are not mekabel tumah, such as stone utensils, dung utensils, and earthen utensils. Let's say I just want to point out something amazing. What do you see from here? Why did they have to? Why did the rabbis have to actively repudiate the tzdukim? Why not just say leave it alone? Because also you see from here that sometimes in life, it is very important to take a stand against things which are wrong. Sometimes in life, you just have to ignore and move on. Right? And whatever, you say, listen, that's your opinion, that's this, live and let live, it's fine. And other times, when the falsehood or the lies are so detrimental to the sanctity of Torah, to the sanctity of the Ribbon Shalom, to the sanctity of Yiddishkeit, then one must take a stand and one must say, no, you're absolutely unequivocally wrong. And the great challenge of life is, there are some people who like to always take a stand on every single issue, and there are some people who lack the courage and conviction to take a stand on any issue. So like most things in life, like you see there's a theme over here, a theme of balance. Right? It's a balance. It's a balance. When to know, when to just turn a deaf ear and say whatever and move on with your life, and when to say no. This deserves a macha. This deserves an objection. This deserves vociferous opposition. For this is incredibly wrong and fundamentally dangerous. So just like we saw that when it comes to ishtadlus, imkein ein ledavar sof. Right? When it comes to how much effort you expend for something to go ahead and address a particular risk, you have to go ahead and have the balance. When do you go ahead and analyze, and when do you just go ahead and act? When do you concern yourself with every single risk versus when they say, listen, I did my part, the rest is up to the Ribbon Shel Olam? When do you make a macha? When do you object to something versus when do you just turn a deaf ear and move on? Incredible balance in life. We will say the Gemara goes weiter. So remember again, we're focusing now on Para Aduma for just a moment. So now we said we sequester the Kohen to a chamber called the Lishkas Beis HaEven, and we go ahead and that chamber is located in the northeast of the Beis HaMikdash. So why the northeast? Kevan dechatas hi v'chatas tuna tzafona, because ultimately, again, since it's a chatas, right? Paraduma is considered in the chatas family, and chatas ultimately has the sprinkling of his blood in the north. It says by paraduma al nochach pnei oel moed, which literally means to the east. You sprinkle it towards the east of the oel moed. Therefore, takino le'rabbanan lishkat tzafona mizracha. So again, since paraduma has elements that require the north, elements that require the east, therefore, the chamber in which they prepared the Kohen Lishkas Beis HaEven was located in the northeast. Therefore, we'll say the positioning of the chamber itself in the northeast area was a reminder to the Kohen of the various things that had to be done in the various directions. Incredible. So my bira, by the way, what's the bira? Because remember, the Gemara said that the chamber of the Lishkas Beis HaEven was located Al Paneha Bira. What's the Bira? So the Gemara says, my Bira, Amra Barachana, Amra Biochanan, Mokom Haya Baharabayis, Ubira Shmo. The Bira was the name of a particular area on the Harabayis. Reish Lakish says, no. Kala Mikdash Kulo Kari Bira. Bira is just another name for the Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say Bira literally means what? A tower. So ultimately, bira is just another name for the Beis HaMikdash. Shneimar habira asher hachinosi, the bira that I prepared. So we'll say, so again, if we go with that last approach, all the Gemara is saying is that Allah Lamaisa, the Lishkas Beis HaEven, was in the Beis HaMikdash compound. Beautiful. So we'll say, now the Gemara says, so we'll say, so what it turns out is, we now have two different examples of the Kohen being sequestered in preparation for an avoda. The first example, the first situation is Yom Kippur, our Mishnah. The Kohen Gadol is sequestered for 7 days prior to the avoda of Yom Kippur. Right? Where is he sequestered? Where? Lishkas Parhedrin. Just remember again, we'll say these are the ways. Good, Chazar is always incredibly important, but again, there are still notebooks from Shkalim. We're going to have notebooks for Yoma also, Emir Hashem. But until then, take your notes, write down these major nekudos, because these are the things to remember from the daf. Kohen Gadol sequestered 7 days beforehand, Lishkas Parhedrin. Good, even though the Mishnah didn't spell it out, B'Pashtus, we understand why he's being sequestered. He's being sequestered because they need to teach him all the intricacies of the avoda, because the avoda is only kshera bo. Only a Kohen Gadol could do the avoda Yom Kippur. But say, Yom Kippur is an exhausting day for all of us. Can you imagine for the Kohen Gadol, he did everything that day. Every single thing in the Beis HaMikdash was him and only him. There are people to help facilitate certain things, but every sacrificial thing was done ultimately by the Kohen Gadol. So that's Kohen Gadol. The second example of it is Para Aduma. In preparation for the Para Aduma, Kohen, remember again, Para Aduma doesn't necessarily have to be done by the Kohen Gadol, but it appears more often than not was done by the Kohen Gadol. Also sequestered 7 days. Where was he sequestered to? Good, we learned it 3 minutes ago. Good, Lishkas Beis HaEven. Lishkas, excellent, good. Keep up with the Chazara. Right, good, Lishkas Beis, come on, help me out a little bit. Right, Lishkas Beis HaEven. Good, sequestered there for 7 days. And again, remember to train him to do the Para Aduma. So we'll say, Sinavi Gemara says, by the way, Minahanimili, where do we see this concept of sequestering Kohanim for 7 days prior to an avodah? Like where does it? Now, we'll say, remember again, the Gemara will often ask this kind of question. It's intriguing because when the Gemara asks this question, I say to myself, why do I need a makar? Right? So we'll say, what's the simple answer? Why do we sequester? From where do we know that you sequester a coin for 7 days prior to the avodah? Where do you know it? Again, do I need a pasuk for that? Meaning, at the end of the day, isn't it just logical? In other words, I have to prepare the Kohen. Okay, so many will say, why 7 days? At least for Yom Kippur, that's right after Rosh Hashanah, right? If you take him 7 days before Yom Kippur, that pretty much places you at Tzom Gedalia, right after Rosh Hashanah, and that's the period of time to go and prepare for Yom Kippur. But I will say, the way that a Jew operates in life is that anything and everything I know is from Torah. Anything and everything is from Torah. There's nothing in my life that doesn't have its root in the Torah Kedosha. So if you're going to tell me that we sequester a coin for 7 days, you need to tell me where that concept comes from in the Torah Kedosha. So Menahani Mili, from where do I know this? Says the Gemara, Amra Minyomi Bar Chiluk, Amra Mechasya Bar Idi, Amra B'Yochanan, Amra Kra. Rabbi say this is great. Last week's parsha, Kasher Asa Bayom Hazeh, Tziva Hashem, Lasos Lechaper Aleichem. Rabbi say the pasuk says in Parashat Shmini that which they did on this day, Tziva Hashem Lasos, Hashem commanded them to do Lechaper Aleichem. Rabbi say, remember again what happened on Yom HaShmini? The 8th day was the dedication of the Mishkan. What happened in the 7 days prior to the 8th day? Practice. The Kohanim were trained. So you see a biblical proof to the notion that you prepare Kohanim for 7 days in order to do something dramatic on day 8. So the Gemara says, now the Gemara darshans the pasuk because it says, Kasher asa bayom hazeh, that which was done on this day, i.e. on the 8th day, meaning the 7 days of preparation, Tziva Hashem lasos, God commanded Klal Yisrael lasos to do lechaper aleichem. So the Gemara darshans lasos elu ma'aseh. So lasos to do, that is a reference ultimately to the para aduma. Lechaper, to atone. Elu ma'aseh Yom Kippurim. That ultimately again is a reference to Yom Kippur. So the pasuk itself makes an allusion. The pasuk by Parashat Shmini that speaks of the 7 days of preparation for the inauguration of the Mishkan makes a reference. Lasos lechaper. Lasos refers to para aduma. Lechaper ultimately refers to Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, Bishlama kulei kra. So let's analyze. So, take a look, by the way, at Rashi for just a moment. Kasher Asa Rashi says, "B'miluim shetziva osam lifrosh mi beisam zayin yamim." The Torah commanded before the inauguration of the Mishkan. The Torah commanded the Kohanim to separate from their homes for 7 days. Shnei amar uPesach oal moed teishvu yomam v'layla u'b'shmini avdu. And on the 8th day they did the avoda in the Mikdash or in the Mishkan. Shnei amar v'ayi bayom hashmini kara uksiv krav al hamizbeach. Kasher tziva lasos lidoros lifrosh zayin lifnei avodas yom echad. So I will say, so really quite interesting. So the makar for the notion of a 7-day preparation before an incredibly important seminal event is the inauguration of the Mishkan. 7 days they prepared. Yom HaShmini was the avoda. So look what the Gemara says. Now remember, the Gemara's understanding that the allusion to Yom Kippur and Paraduma comes from 2 words. Lasos lechaper, right? Lasos lechaper aleichem. So lasos is Paraduma. Lechaper ultimately again is Yom Kippur. So it says the Gemara, Bishlama kulei kraba paraluma tukom. You're right. You can't tell me that the entire pasuk, meaning lasos lechaper aleichem, is a reference to para aduma. Why not? Because the Gemara says lechaper ksiv upara la bas kaparahi. Because both say the Torah uses lashon of lechaper. Para aduma is not mechaper. What does para aduma do? It's mitaher, right? To say these, often we use these words interchangeably, but they're dramatically different words. There's tara and there's kapara. Tara means to be cleansed from ritual impurity, to be cleansed from tumah. Kapara ultimately is atonement. Even though we use them, Rabbi Soloveitchik, Zivitzadik Livracha, writes about this in his tshuva drashas that about the 2 different aspects of tshuva, of kapara and tara, and he speaks out the idea that sin, that chait, is gorim 2 things. It's gorim onesh and tuma, right? It causes again a liability for punishment and ritual and spiritual impurity. And therefore, tshuva itself has these 2 parts as well, kapara and tara. We'll see in just a moment. Anyway, tangent. So the Gemara says as follows. So I understand the pasuk can't be referring to paraduma because the pasuk says lasos lechaper aleichem, and paraduma is not mechaper. It's not mechaper. It doesn't atone. It purifies, but it doesn't atone. Ela ema kulei krabi yom kippurim ksiv. But I will say, I don't understand. Why don't you interpret the entire phrase of lasos lechaper aleichem as just referring to Yom Kippur? And maybe there's only a din of sequestering by Yom Kippur, but no such halacha by para aduma. To which the Gemara says, Amri Yolif Tziva Tziva. Because Rabbi say, make a Gzera Shava of Tziva Tziva. Ksiv Hacha Tziva Hashem Lasos. It says over here by Yom HaShmini, right, by the inauguration of the Mishkan, Tziva Hashem Lasos. And it says by Paraduma, Zos Chukas HaTorah Sher Tziva Hashem Lemar. So Rabbi say, it says by Paraduma Tziva also. So, just like it says Tziva by Paraduma, It says tziva by the inauguration of the Mishkan, and just like the inauguration of the Mishkan required 7-day sequestering before the Avoda, so too Para Aduma requires 7-day sequestering prior to the Avoda as well. The Gemara says, "Ma lahalan para, af kan para, uma kan prisha, af lahalan prisha." Therefore, I will say Gzera Shava. So it turns out, interestingly enough, just so you follow the stages of the limud. At first, we thought that Para Aduma was going to be learned out from the phrase Lasos lechaper aleichem. Lechaper refers to Yom Kippur. Lasos refers to Para Aduma. But the Gemara just says, by the way, that phrase Lasos lechaper aleichem could also just as easily fully refer to what? Fully refer to Yom Kippur. To which the Gemara says, you're right. If you want to learn out Para Aduma, you can also learn that from Gzera Shava of Tziva. Right? It says Tziva by Para Aduma, it says Tziva by Yoma Shmini, and therefore teaches me that there's a din afrasha. The Gemara says, Amid Bezer will say, Ve'ema, Tziva Yom Kippurim, but maybe the Gzera Shava of Tziva also is only for Yom Kippur. Because the pasuk says, they did as HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe, to which the Gemara says, interestingly enough, Danin tziva delifnei asiya, mitziva delifnei asiya, ve'in danin tziva dela'achar asiya, mitziva delifnei asiya. So we'll say, interestingly enough, what the Gemara says is by Yom Kippur, it's just interesting, a technical issue over here. By Yom Kippur, the way the pasuk is written, it says, Vayas kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Tziva is written after asiya. Asiya means the performance. So it says Vayas, they performed, and then it says as Hashem commanded. If you notice again by Para Aduma, as well as by Parsha Shmini, so interestingly enough, ultimately again the tziva is written before asiya. So in other words, even though you could technically make the Gzera Shava of Tziva from Yom Kippur to Parsha Shmini to the inauguration as well, but the Tziva of Para Aduma more closely resembles the Tziva of Yom HaShmini than the Tziva of Yom Kippur resembles the Tziva of Yom HaShmini. Why is that? Because both by Para Aduma and Yom HaShmini, the inauguration, the Tziva precedes the Asiya, versus by Yom Kippur, ultimately again, the Asiya, the quote-unquote performance, precedes the tziva. Okay, so the Gemara says, "I ve'ima tziva de kabaros." We'll say this is very interesting. Maybe there's another Gzera Shava, and maybe it's not tziva from Para Aduma to inauguration, but maybe it's tziva of karbanos to inauguration. I will say that this is pretty wild. If you were to make this Gzera Shava of tziva of karbanos to inauguration, what reality would that yield? What would it yield? What it would tell you is that before the performance of any carbon, a Kohen must be sequestered for 7 days in order to prepare him to do the avodah. Take a look at the top Rashi, Beis Amad Beis, ve'ima tziva de karbanos lahatzrich kol kohen ovid b'mikdash prisha lekarbanos sibor. And achinami, maybe a Kohen needs to be sequestered before he goes ahead and he does any carbon. Ve'ima tziva de karbanos tichsiv biyom tzavoso es b'nei Yisrael. Because again, halacha l'maisa, the pasuk says by karbanos as well, biyom tzavoso, on the day that he commanded Klal Yisrael. So you have tziva by karbanos, you have tziva by miluim, inauguration. Just like inauguration required 7 days sequestering and preparation, so too maybe before every single carbon, a Kohen has to be sequestered to be prepared for the avodah. To which the Gemara says, no. Done in tziva mitziva, ve'in done in tzavoso mitziva. So first of all, the Gemara says, it's not a pure Gzera Shava. Why? Because although the shorish is the same, the words are not. We would rather go ahead and darshan a Gzera Shava of tziva than what? Tzavoso to tziva. I will say, even though the words mean the same thing, if you have a choice between making a Gzera Shava between karbanos and inauguration, karbanos and miluim, but karbanos has tzavoso and miluim, inauguration has tziva, versus Para Aduma, which has tziva, and miluim, which has tziva, we would rather go with the Gzera Shava between Para and miluim than between carbon and miluim. Tush the Gemara says, but 1 second, that's disingenuous. I'll tell you why. My nafkamina, but Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel say this drasha shows up. It feels like in every Masechta. But we learned in Shiv Rabbi Shmuel, v'shava kohen uba kohen. Right? Ultimately, again, the pasuk says The pasuk says the coin will come, or literally again, the coin will return and the coin will come. They both say this is by tzaras habatim. So remember again, very quickly, what this refers to is as follows: Halach l'maisa, when a person says kanega nirali babayis, I think that there's tzaras in my home. The coin comes. He sees some stuff around some of the stones. So what does he do? He scrapes out the plaster, the affected plaster. He takes out the stone, and ultimately they lock up the house for 7 days. If again the coin comes back 7 days later, and the stuff is back, or it's spread, they remove it again and lock it up for another 7 days to see what happens. Shabbos said, the process is the same the first time the coin comes and the second time the coin comes. Where do we learn out that the process is the same? From the Lashon of V'shava coin, uba coin. The coin comes, the coin returns. Shabbos say, interestingly enough, we make a gzer shava between the two visits of the coin based on V'shav uba, which tells you that what? Very simple, tells you that what? Tells you what? That Gzeira Shava doesn't really even require identical words, which is a little bit mind-blowing and goes against all of our chinuch in Gemara, because I will say again, right, Talmudic methodology 101 is Gzeira Shava requires the same word, except when it doesn't. So in other words, meaning there are examples of Gzeira Shavas that are made from even dissimilar words, like V'shav uba. Right? The Gzeira Shava is meant that in both situations the coin is coming into the house. So the process is the same every time the coin comes into the house. So the Gemara says, don't tell me you can't make a Gzeira Shava from what? From tzava so to tziva. Tzava so and tziva is the same word. If you can make a Gzeira Shava from V'shava coin uba coin, you can absolutely make a Gzeira Shava from tziva to tzava so. Well, if that's the case, maybe the Gzeira Shava is not between para aduma and miluim, to teach you that just like miluim, the inauguration had 7 days preparation, so too para aduma 7 days preparation. Maybe the Gzeira Shava is from karbanos to miluim. So we'll say, which is my way to teach me that before a Kohen does any karban, he is sequestered for 7 days, properly trained and prepared for the karban. To which the Gemara says, Hanimili, you're right. You can make a Gzeira Shava with dissimilar words. But when is that? Heicha deleka de domila. They don't say that's only when you don't have identical words. Aval heicha deika de damile midedamile yafina. So also to which the Gemara says something very, very logical. The Gemara says you're absolutely right. You can make a Gzeira Shava from dissimilar words. When you don't have another similar context to make a Gzeira Shava from. But if you have a choice between making Gzeira Shava between identical words versus non-identical words, of course you make the Gzeira Shava between the identical words. So therefore I will say, for example, if we set the table over here, what do we have in front of us? We know, we'll say, the source. The source for sequestering is where? Source for sequestering? Miluim. Right, that's the source for sequestering, the inauguration of the Mishkan. Now we're trying to learn out other concepts from the Miluim. So right now it's on the table. So Yom Kippur we're good, right? Where do you learn Yom Kippur from? One word. L'chaper. Right, so Yom Kippur we're good. Para Aduma, we're trying to learn out. We thought maybe it's Lassos, but even Lassos, it's not so. Why does that refer to Para Aduma? Fine. Tziva, Gzeira Shava. Says Tziva by Para Aduma, Tziva by Miluim. So the Gemara tries to say, well, 1 second, maybe it's not a Gzeira Shava between Para Aduma and Miluim, maybe it's a Gzeira Shava between Karbanos and Miluim. Because by Karbanos it says Tzavaso, which again effectively is the same word as Tziva. So to which the Gemara says, well, if you have a choice between making a Gzeira Shava of Tzavaso, Tziva, Karbanos, Miluim, to Tziva, Paraduma to Miluim, we're going to choose what? Tziva. That's all. It's only when you don't have similar words that you then have the ability to go ahead and make a Gzeira Shava between these words. Of course, I just want to point out, we're speaking about like having a choice to make a Gzeira Shava. Remember again, no matter how creative or smart you are, you can't make a Gzeira Shava, right? Gzeira Shavas we have a Masorah for them. So the Gemara is making it sound like you could choose, but what it means is just a halachic process when looking at the Gzeira Shava to be made, if we choose obviously identical words first. Only if there's no identical words does that open the door for Gzeira Shava between non-identical words. The Gemara goes weiter. L'chaper, elu ma'aseh Yom Kippurim. So remember also going back to the pasuk of Miluim, the word l'chaper, that refers to the avodah of Yom Kippur. So that creates the source that pre-Yom Kippur the Kohen is sequestered for 7 days. I ve'ema kapar de karbanos. Maybe not. Who says l'chaper means Yom Kippur? Maybe l'chaper just means general karbanos. And once again, we're floating the idea that maybe before the Kohen does any avodah, he is sequestered for 7 days. To which the Gemara says, well, how can you do that? Mia dinan hey koin misrami debayle prisha. So I was saying, you don't really ever know ahead of time which kohen is going to do the avodah. So who are you going to sequester? Who are you going to sequester? Right? It's Tuesday. Who's doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash? There could be any variety of people. So who exactly are you going to sequester? In other words, even if you want to entertain the idea that a kohen before he offers up karbanos should be sequestered for 7 days, how do you know who to sequester? To which the Gemara says, Devayle Prisha, Amri Alamalo, Nibayle Prisha. I think it just looks like maybe the internet cut out. Okay, so the Gemara says, Nibayle Prisha, Lukule Mishmeres Beis Av. To which the Gemara says, maybe halacha lemaisa, let's just go ahead and separate out the entire Beis Av. But remember again, very quickly. So halacha lemaisa, there are 24 mishmoros, 24 shifts of kohanim, right? And remember again, each mishmar was comprised of multiple batei avos, families. And each Beis Av had an opportunity to go ahead and serve 1 day in the Beis Hamikdash. So in other words, I don't know which specific kohen, but I do know which family is going to be on call on any given day. So just go ahead and sequester that family. Hopefully they have more than one room. Right? So just go ahead and sequester that family. So I could take a particular Beis Av, a particular Kohanic family, sequester them for 7 days prior to the avodah, to which the Gemara says, "Danin davar shekavur lozman, mi davar shekavur lozman. La fuke karbanos dechol Yoma isnu." So we'll say, no. And we're making this gzera shava. We go ahead and we equate things which have a set time. For example, Miluim, the inauguration of the Mishkan, had a set time. Yom Kippur has a set time. But we don't include things which don't have a set time. What's an example of something that doesn't have a set time? Daily karbanos. Well, although it has a set time during the day, is something that occurs every single day. So he's coming to teach you about the regalim. But maybe he's coming to say that before a kohen offers up anything on the regalim, which again the regalim have an appointed time, maybe halacha lemaisa, the kohen has to be sequestered before doing the avodah on the regalim. To which the Gemara says no. Danin davar shenoik pam achas b'shana, mi davar hanoik pam achas b'shana, lafuki regalim delav pam achas b'shana ninu. No, because the gzera shav is from miluim. Miluim occurred once during the year. So therefore, whatever we're going to learn after the miluim is also going to be something that what? That occurs once during the year, as opposed to the regalim, which occur 3 times throughout the year. So you'll say, fine, maybe it will say the halach of sequestering is not a din by all of the regalim, but it's the din just by what? By what? By one of the regalim. So the Gemara says, hey minayu, so which regal? Which regal is going to have a din of sequestering? Maybe it'll be Pesach because it's the first Yom to mention the Torah. First wide line. Or maybe it's Sukkis because Sukkis Baruch Hashem is a lot of mitzvahs. And so we'll say, so how are you going to know which regal it refers to? Ella, Danin Prishas Shiva Yom Echad, Mi Prishas Shiva Yom Echad. Rather, I will say, Miluim creates a paradigm. And what's the paradigm? 7 days of preparation for 1 day of service. That's the paradigm. So there, and where else does that paradigm apply? Yom Kippur. Where won't it apply? By Yom Tovim. Because also what happens Yom Tovim? Yom Tovim are a minimum of what? Right, Rosh Hashanah is the shortest one, which is 2 days. But the regalim at least, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, Shavuos is only 1 day, but technically speaking, you could offer up their karbanos over a course of 7 days. Ve'in danin prisha shiva l'shiva. Ve'in danin prisha shiva l'shiva. Mi prishas shiva l'yom echad. So I will say, halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says the paradigm is 7 days of preparation for 1 day of service. That paradigm does not include the regalim, because that would then mean 7 days of preparation for 7 days of service. So I will say, we'll stop over here for today. So just we're leaving off a little bit mid-discussion. So here's what we know. We know that there is a din, ultimately again, of Prishas Shiva, 7 days of sequestering and preparation for Yom Kippur, 7 days of sequestering and preparation, ultimately for Para Aduma. We know that the one source we have for this concept is the Miluim, is the inauguration of the Mishkan. What we're trying to figure out, so Yom Kippur is kind of squared away. Yom Kippur is learned out from the word kapara. We said Para Aduma is learned out either from La'asos in the pasuk or from Tziva. All the Gemara is trying to entertain right now is once you've opened this up to Yom Kippur and potentially to Paraduma, why can't it also potentially include other things? So the Gemara is going to go through the list of potential sequestering situations and ultimately going to prove why none of them work because they don't resemble the paradigmatic example of Miluim. But so we'll stop over and pick up with this new daf tomorrow. Shkach